Hello. Hi guys. Just waiting on a few more viewers to join in and then I'll get right started. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello, hello. Hey Divya. How are you? Okay, I think I can just get started now because we are on a schedule. Hello, my name is Karun Ramani, and I am a visual artist based in Etobicoke. And I moved here from India about 5 years ago to pursue my career in visual art and illustration. Hello, new people. Hi, hello. So my main mediums of work usually include hybrid media. So I work a lot with bridging traditional and digital mediums. So I work a lot with paint and ink in my dry traditional mediums. And then I also work with a lot of digital mediums to try and make my work viewable and experienced in both traditional media and digital media. So what I'll start off with otherwise is to just show you some of my process and workflow for how I bridge these two mediums, and also talk to you a little bit about some of the things that I do in terms of my business, how I manage to get other students and other people involved in terms of using these new media as well. So I will flip the camera now and walk you through my studio space. So here we go. So as you can see here, I have my drafting table and my trusty piano. So I am a hobby musician as well. I love music. I've always had a passion for it, but I was always a lot better at visual art and therefore chose it as my career path. But that doesn't stop me from every now and then just getting into my musical mode. And here I have my art cabinet with some of my trusty books that I always use for inspiration. So from the top, I have origami, which is very, very therapeutic according to me. It's one of my favorite forms of traditional art and craft. And then, of course, trusty Harry Potter, Philosopher's Stone, just for every now and then you need inspiration for storytelling. Shout out to all of my Potterheads out there. And this is a really interesting book. It's called The Old Master Through Modern Print. So this is actually a catalog book, and I bought this at Strand in New York City. And it's a really great book, one of my favorites actually, where I always have a lot of these ink masters, and I really love ink as a medium because with using just one color, you are going to be achieving so many different values and details. And I always find that very fascinating in my work and otherwise. And then I have Edgar Payne, The Scenic Journey. So that's like one of my favorite artists ever. He is a Californian impressionist, and I really do enjoy that movement in art a lot. And some other books. So I am also an animator to start off. So I do use a lot of traditional techniques by animators and other artists from before. So I was just flip the camera over here for a second. I do have a formal training as an animator. So I started in TV animation. So I used to do a lot of pre-production art. For those of you who don't know what pre-production art is, it usually involves concept art, storyboarding, animatic creation, prop design, and different things like that. So I usually go for more so, I used to work for a company studio that used to work closely with Cartoon Network. So with a lot of TV shows in India, I used to work with them to make storyboards and for things like that. And then I made the transition into core illustration because I realized that that was really my passion, which was for visual storytelling in a more simplified medium, I'd say. Animation is a beautiful medium nonetheless. I still do see myself working in that medium, but for the most part, I do like simple visual narratives, and that's what I plan to go for. So jumping back to another one of my favorite parts of animation is layout and background, and that's kind of where I always see myself working. And then finally, I have New York Line by Line. This is a beautiful book, and it is just generally, again, an ink-based book and just displays the entire beautiful city of New York using just lines. And then in here, I have some of my materials that I always keep. So I have all of my art kit in here. I work with clay sometimes, so I have clay tools. I have some paint and my favorite shape in the universe, and also one of the most universal shapes, I'd say, the sphere. So I do use this little interesting thing. Oh, let me try and get a good lighting on it. There we go. So this is a chrome ball. And for those of my friends who have worked in the animation industry or the VFX industry, this is an indispensable help when it comes to getting a good idea of how environments should be lit. So I use this a lot in my work. Like, for example, if I were to take it outside here, you can get a really good idea of how texture works. I'll say hi to my roommates there. So I use this chrome ball to just get a good idea of how environments need to be lit and how my materials would react to these different environments, whether they're indoor or outdoor. So it's really useful to have a chrome ball if you don't have one. I actually sourced this one in India, from a blacksmith, I believe. I can't really remember where I got it, but it was a long time ago. And yeah, that's kind of my art cupboard with some papers and everything. We'll get into my work shortly. A little dartboard just for some catharsis every now and then. This is a really important part of my work process. We will talk about it in a little bit. Most of you will know what that is. It's a VR headset. Okay, so jumping right into kind of the work I've been doing most recently. So this is kind of where I'm at right now. I'm working on a series called Let the Grass Be. And what that series is about is it takes 7 core downtown Toronto locations and intersections, most specifically. And I wanted to visualize what these intersections would look like if the nature and vegetation had taken more precedence in urban planning when Toronto was first being planned out, and perhaps even now in modern urban planning as well. So basically it's things like what if there was more greenery all over the place, so if we had green sidewalks instead. And I don't know if you guys can recognize which location in the city this is, but it is Front and Union, so a very iconic Toronto location. And I kind of wanted to focus more so on the 2 important buildings, which is Union Station and, of course, the Fairmont Royal York. The CN Tower is all the way in the corner over here, so you can't really see it. But, I mean, I feel like the CN Tower is featured in a lot of paintings about Toronto, so I tried to keep it more so about other buildings here. And yeah, so you'll notice that there's a really unique perspective going on over here when it comes to this painting. And what that is it is basically a 360 panorama painting. So if you'll see here, I sourced this image from Google Street View, and full credits to Google for these beautiful vistas that they have of the entire city now. So I basically sourced this from Google Street View, and then I have drawn it out onto my larger, this is done on wooden panel. So this is aspen plywood. I pretty much sourced the wood myself from Home Depot and also did all of the backing and the framing myself. Oop, dropped a couple of things there. Just pick this up and you can see. So I did do the framing myself as well. It's always good to try and make these things custom, because that way if you can get your own sizes, you are in command of the size, you are in command of everything. And with this particular project, I did have to be in command of the size, mostly because 360 panoramas have to always be 2 2:1 in ratio. They always have to be 2:1. So this series particularly I did in 32:16, the size. So it's fairly large. It's a medium size, I'd say. It's not large, it's not small. And I did use my reference, of course. And over here, this is another intersection, which is front and church. I did this as a digital rough color sketch just to have a good idea about how my values for the sky and the grass have to be. So if you'll notice, my sky and grass, those colors really needed to match and also just look good overall in terms of my value. So this particular piece is a midday, so kind of noon. So you'll notice that the sun is high up top over there. Yeah, so in terms of the medium I'm using over here, specifically this project, I'm doing with acrylic latex, and also a little bit of background about why I'm using these materials. So this is indoor acrylic latex paint. This is house paint. The reason I'm using house paint is because I wanted to, firstly, for longevity. House paint is really good for longevity. And also, I wanted to kind of foreshadow the kinds of materials used in making these buildings and in painting these buildings. So I'm trying to show the contrast between the human-made, materials and the natural materials. So the last layer that I'm going to be adding to this painting will be using completely naturally made natural pigment oil paints, and I will be kind of giving all of the details of the grass right at the end. So that kind of shows the contrast of natural paints for natural elements and human-made paints for all of the human-made elements. So that's a really interesting way, I think, to find myself using my mediums. And then in terms of the brushes, pretty straightforward. I really like flat heads and round head brushes. Like those are the kind of ones that I use for the most part. I really like flat heads for all of my details. So I really go in with detail. I really like detail. And I do say I'm a or maybe like a classical impressionist / realist. So I like to go in between both. I'm not completely an impressionist by any means. Maybe hopefully once I master painting a little bit more. But I do like realism to a certain extent. But I do also like to leave a lot of things, especially with my natural elements, to the viewer's imagination, essentially. Right? So now I'll show you, as I say, so this is, I would like to call the light side of my studio. Oh, here's another inspiration for my Let the Grass Be series. This is Roncesvalles. So I made this while I was at Humber. Oh, I forgot to mention, I did go to Humber when I first moved here in 2015. So I did the visual arts program there, visual and digital arts. Shout out to Noni Kaur and Cole Swanson, my two great professors who really helped me realize my potential. And I did make this for one of their classes while I was there. So this was really fun. And then this side of my studio, or also / my living room, I like to call the dark side. So I say this is the light side because this is where all of my traditional work happens. And then I call this the dark side because this is where all the digital work happens. So in terms of digital work, you always do want a darker setting, mostly because you want your monitor to be able to show you the correct colors. So if you'll notice, I already have the same painting that I have over there scanned in, and I've taken a good high-res photo of it, and I have Photoshop open over here. Or actually, I'll talk to you about this particular version of Photoshop that I use. In terms of my hardware, I have my trusty Bluetooth keyboard, which I hope is still running. Sometimes it just tends to go off. Oh yeah, there we go. Yep, we're back in business. All right, so that is my trusty Bluetooth keyboard. I have it wired in right now just for this video. I have my digital tablet, which is really, really useful. I use this tablet for pretty much all of my digital work. It's an XP pen tablet, very simple to use, and also my mouse. So I'm just gonna have this here, and now you will notice the magic of what happens with this 360 panorama. So if you'll notice, I have my panorama all set up over here, and how I like this why I call this a hybrid series is because imagine the pitch essentially is imagine you had this painting on your wall and then your friends had a look at it and you could tell them what if you wanted to step inside of the painting, right? So essentially if you went to a panorama viewer here, this is actually kind of the extra dimension when it comes to viewing this painting. So see, if you zoom in and zoom out, maybe I can zoom in over here. There we go. So if you'll notice, this is actually how you view this painting, right? So this is to scale, and the best part about it is when it's really immersive, you can really get in there. So if you'll notice, so I have the sun. Sometimes you have some of these artifacts because it's really hard to plot these things traditionally. So sometimes you will get these artifacts where the sun is kind of like wonkily shaped and things like that. So I will show you how I usually get rid of those mistakes. But sometimes, I mean, you know, like it's not so bad. But I guess in this case, it is an egg-shaped sun, which is surreal at best. So yeah, that's kind of how it looks when you wrap it around a sphere. So this is one of my favorite mediums. This is virtual reality, as you can tell, and as you may know. And that's where I mentioned that you can also experience it in these goggles, which is kind of the kicker. That's really where you are immersed into this actual vista, because then you are like there and it's pretty much like you are a part of this futuristic world. And you can really imagine what it looks like. So that is on the computer, and then similarly I have it on another device over here. So this is pretty much what it looks like on your mobile device as well, right? So there we have it. Yeah, so that's kind of the workflow that I usually go for. Sometimes I do find myself going back and forth between my digital and my traditional mediums. So I usually start off digital and then I will go traditional, but sometimes I do start traditionally. Like I'll show you another VR series that I'm working on. This one is way less to fruition. This is inside of my sketchbook, so I have like a bunch of work here. I'll show you the specific piece that I want you to see. So this one. Okay, I'm just going to do this. I know it's going to be sideways for some of you, but there we go. So this series is called As the Artist. I'm sure most of you can tell exactly what painting this part of the piece is inspired by. It's The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, right? So yeah, this series is my attempt at trying to immerse the viewer, immerse my audience into the shoes of famous painters and artists from that time. So what I'm trying to do is essentially the story behind the Starry Night. I'll just give you a quick rundown. Van Gogh came up with the idea while he had admitted himself into the mental asylum of Saint-Remy in France. St. Paul's Asylum, actually, in Saint-Remy. And he came up with this idea based on the view from his room window at that facility. So he really, I mean, like a lot of it is left to imagination from his part, because there are some amazing things about this painting. But in general, like this tree is definitely exactly how it looks outside of his window. But some of the things like the church and all those things, he did make up the placement just for the sake of composition. But essentially what happens here is I've made it look like it's you looking out of the window. So it's essentially I am placing you at his and I should have probably thought of that before. I'm going to try and find I'm sure I have it in here. There it is. Okay, so I'll actually here, since I have it open over here, you can see my planning, how I go through the planning process over here. There's the planning. So this is where I'd like to say that I started digitally and then I finished traditionally. So if you'll notice here, this was all done in Photoshop. And you'll notice that I have a grid behind me, behind my entire piece. So this is all the planning process. You see all the lines, all the red is all my planning. And I just pretty much thought about like, okay, where do I want the cypress tree to be? Oh, is that what it's called? I'm not entirely sure, sorry. But I'm not a botanist. And then obviously the town of San Remi as well, and all of the stars and everything. And then if I move to my left here, that's kind of the, there. That is the finished piece. So I did download it and I will show you how it looks in this. There we go. So this is again, as you'll see, like you are inside of his room, right? So you see it's like you're there. I wanted to make it look like you were literally looking out of the window. So that's kind of what it is. So as you'll see, again, it's a very kind of impressionistic / surreal take on what it might have looked like. This particular piece, I did go for an ink finish, and I do plan to color it digitally or possibly even using some watercolors later on. But right now I just left it as ink because I'm not entirely sure if I want to go for something more colored. Because, I mean, obviously Van Gogh's work is, and all Impressionist work is always, some of the base of it is color and light. And in this I kind of left it out of the piece, but I will see. I mean, like right now I feel like I like it as an ink because it kind of takes away from the other, from the source material essentially, as you'd have it. So there you go. Okay, so that's kind of like my workflow, as you can tell. I'll show you some of my other work. So over here I have my grad show piece actually that I did for the Visual and Digital Arts program at Humber. And I also applied for the BMO First Art Award with using this piece. Unfortunately, did not get selected, but I still had a great time making it. So I call this one Leaves Like Ants. So a lot of my work is inspired, I'd say, by environmentalism and sustainability. So I am a stern believer in climate change, and I do believe that we, as a civilization and a species, we are in debt and in great debt to the planet and have a lot of work cut out for us. So this one is kind of to, I'd say, metaphorize kind of what we've been doing over the last few centuries. So it's essentially all of these humans, all of us people, it looks, I'd say it's open to interpretation, but the way I saw it is it looks like we are bowing down and it looks like we are praying in unity or to this great being, to this great massive tree. But if you zoom in closer, you'll start to see that in our love, in our kind of in our lust, love, whatever you want to call it, for this tribute, we start to pretty much kind of like consume. We start to entirely consume it. And we start to climb this, so that's why I said leaves like ants. So I did also leave the tree almost like a skeleton. So it has no leaves, it is only the branches, almost like what we're going to start seeing in the winter soon enough. And in the background, you can't really make out, but you'll notice that it kind of changes. The landscape is a much colder and darker landscape, and these same trees start to become, I guess, bellowing, smoky kind of factories of sort, natural factories. But yes, essentially, that's kind of the piece, my larger piece. I'd say this is kind of the largest I've worked so far. I do want to go much, much larger in the future. But yeah, there you have it. Like, that's kind of where I was at with that. And, just a little bit of Childish Gambino for you. He's a really cool artist. I do like to hang work up every now and then. Like, I have a couple of other pieces down here. And the rest of my Let the Grass Be pieces actually are all the way in there. I didn't want to remove them because I want them to stay packed up for now. I just removed this one to show you. Yeah, so that's kind of the system that I go for the most part. And yeah, pretty much like, so I do work a lot with these two mediums. I'm also an avid photographer. I do love photography. So that's kind of like one of my favorite mediums as well. I use a lot of photography as reference for my work and everything too. And yeah, like, so what I did want to mention right at the end here is I started a company last year called artability.co. And what I do there is I want to teach people about these mediums. I actually did teach. I conducted a workshop at Humber Lake Shore to do a painting of the surrounding of the lakeshore grounds using the same technique, using VR techniques. So I want everyone to learn about this because like virtual reality is one of the best mediums, and it also helps you essentially make immersive paintings. So it's like, imagine every painting you made or a painting that you made, you could step inside of. I think that is like one of the most exciting things. So if you do want to know more about that, don't hesitate from just sending me a text about it. I have pinned a comment with my Instagram accounts and also my portfolio so you can see more of my work. And yeah, so that's kind of like the style of work I go for. For the most part, it's, yeah, traditional and digital. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much my my home studio, which also is doubles as my living room. So with my roommates, we always we play a lot of tennis in this household, so we also do that, and we also play cards. We love cards. We play cards, and yeah, during the day I do use it as my studio. So thank you so much, guys, for those of you who did join me. I really hope you have a great rest of day and a really enjoyable winter ahead. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Have a great, great day. Okay. Bye.